Yes, guys, how you doing? Welcome back to the Spurs Talk Show. I am Sean Butler. I hope you're all happy and healthy doing the things that you love with those that you love to do them with. I hope you're not too hot. I hope it's been a bit of a weird day around here. It's been muggy, then it was like overcast. It looked like it was going to storm. It didn't. And now it's got back to muggy again. So I'm hot, I'm sweaty. Got a couple of ciders, but I'm not in any way getting like I was last night. That was outrageous. It was rat-a-tar-tar, tantalizingly tasty, but it was silly. I woke up this morning with a headache. We don't like that stuff around here. It's Saturday night. Your Saturday night starts right here, guys. We've got a Levy debate. I titled the show Levy Out versus Sean. We've got a couple of Levy Outers coming on, plus Savage joining us in about 10 minutes as well. 4 people to chew over a couple of nuanced debates regarding, essentially, Daniel Levy's put the cat amongst the pigeons with his ambitions and his claims with Vinny that we are going to be looking to win the Premier League and the Champions League over the next X amount of years. How long is that in the distance? We don't know. We didn't really give too many specifics, but you asked for it. You asked for some clarification and you got it. Is that acceptable? Or is now the goalpost being moved to a different direction? We've got my man Lubo and we've got Levynomics, the Twitter accountant who likes to chew through the detail and the data, but he comes at it from a balanced perspective, like I try to do, but he leans a little bit more Levy out. We've got those two coming on, and then Sava's coming in. They're right here, right now. Make sure you smash the nanny out of the like button. Smash everything out of the park with regards to the subscriber button and the notification bell. Links will be flowing through the descriptions towards the Twitter handles, etc. as we go through. Please, guys, give a big Spurs Talk Show hello to Connor and to Lubo. How you doing, boys? Good to see you. Connor, I'll start with you, mate. How's things?
Yeah, very well, mate. Very hot, bit sunburnt, so I'm expected to look like Alan Brazil by the end of this. But yeah, I'm good, mate.
Yeah, nice. How you doing, Lubo? You okay, mate?
All good tonight, thanks. Looking forward to the show. You're right. Saturday night starts here, doesn't it?
You'll be looking like Hulk Smash, the Incredible Hulk in a minute, mate, as soon as I say a couple of trigger words. Like, for example, if Daniel Levy goes and gets us a little rat-a-tar-tar like Eberechi Eze, I mean, it's not a bad start to the summer, and Daniel Levy's on the back of, like, saying some things regarding ambition. If we get Eze, I'm pretty sure we can talk about it, but I'm pretty sure that looks something like a club record signing. It looks like the best ready-made, oven-ready player that we've signed since probably Rafael van der Vaart. And I think that everybody behind the entire fan base, whatever you feel, will be on board it. What does that mean for the likes of you, Ian, who have been so vehemently furious and frustrated every time someone has the audacity to compliment your sort of somewhat doppelganger, but also your absolute polar opposites in the way that you see the football lens. We're going to find out in just a second. Let me just quickly say, guys, in the chat, there's 220 people here already, straight out of the gate. Love to see it. No beers today, Sean, says Billy. 100%, mate. 100%. Guys, just do what you got to do, right? Be nice to everyone. I'm sure it's going to be a spicy conversation, especially when Sava gets here. It's always spicy. With Lubo as well, with me. And Connor's going to come in to bring the financial side, because as I was saying backstage, if I'm entirely honest, guys, I've kind of let myself down a little bit over the last 6 months. I've taken my eye off the ball a little bit with the specifics of the accounts. And so I've actually realized I've said a couple of things on Twitter that I've actually, and Connor, for one, brought it to my attention. I was wrong about a couple of things. I don't like that. I don't like it, but it is what it is, because you have to follow where the clicks are, and the clicks don't seem to be necessarily always around the financial stuff. So we're going to let Connor sort of steer us right here tonight on the ins and outs of the finance. I'll challenge where necessary, but Lubo's just going to come in with his agenda, because agendas have got a agenda. Boys, let's start with the let's start with the news today from Paul O'Keefe. He dropped the bomber. This geezer blocked me live on stream, by the way. If anyone was watching about a month ago, I've had no problem with him. Interactions with him galore. I've had DMs shared and all that stuff. And I was looking at his tweet whilst I think it was Sava and me and someone else were. We had his tweet on the screen share, but we were talking about something else, as we do, and all of a sudden the tweet refreshed and it was, "You're now blocked by Paul O'Keefe." So I didn't see the tweet, but I've been shared the tweet that he has said that Eberechi Eze is not available necessarily for a £68 million one-off fee that triggers on July the 1st, by the way, that actually Crystal Palace are more than willing to accept 3 lump sums of £20 million each. It doesn't mean that Tottenham are therefore front runners. Maybe that changes things a little bit. Maybe there's more competition that will come in. But in any event, it's good news in terms of the cash flow, which I'm sure Connor and I can agree. Cash flow is a problem and a predicament at Tottenham right now. Profitability is one thing, cash flow is another. Ian, I'll start with you, mate. If Eberechi Eze signs for Tottenham on July the 2nd, what does that do for your blood pressure regarding, before I get into Daniel Levy, regarding how our team is taking shape for next season? As a positive, it's a good thing, right?
Oh, massive positive. Listen, all I want, I'll be happy if Levy turns his obsessive nature to making non-footballing activities successful. If he switches over to the football side and gives it the respect it deserves and behaves like a proper football chairman, I mean, he has the most privileged job that's out there. I couldn't think of a better job other than playing for Spurs. He has got the elite job. And he's cheated. I think, so what, chairman of Tottenham Hotspur?
Getting vitriol and hate thrown at him by people like you every day.
I think he has treated. I think he has treated that privilege with the utmost disrespect for 24 and a half years.
Oh, here we go. We're starting already. Okay. Right.
Just maybe he's now realising what a great privilege it is to be chairman of this great club. And he's actually doing something about it. And he's thinking, oh, do you know what? Look at those fans. Look how many turned up at that parade. Look how good it was in Berghvall. I mean, Jesus Christ, people actually get emotional about football. Look at the joy. People get...
He got emotional too, mate.
We're
champions! Sounded like he was a deaf man, to be entirely honest. He was a little bit slurring his words, wasn't he? And then he said that. It was weird.
So listen, if he does the right thing... If he supports the club and gives the club 100% of his time, and he's got that drive and determination and tenacity to be a success.
Yeah, all that bollocks is subjective though, Lubo. Like it's about one trade, one transfer. If he gets Eze done, does it mean you guys shut up for 5 minutes?
We'll look on it as a start. We'll look on it, won't we? Connor, don't you think? It'll be a start.
What are you thinking, Connor? What are you thinking, mate?
It'll be a start.
Yeah, I mean, look, I think, if we get Eze over the line, you have to give credit because I think it's the signing that everyone wants. I always felt the release clause point was a bit of a red herring because really, if we really wanted to get Eze over the line and we were worried about cash, that's where you start looking at maybe paying a bit more than the release clause and agreeing with Palace separately to do a sort of staged, instalment type payment anyway. So I always thought that regardless of this news from Paul O'Keefe, the only good bit I think that comes out of this is that it looks like the valuation's at 60 and they're happy to go 20-20-20 rather than us having to pay maybe 70. But I never thought it would be in the world of paying 60 million cash up front or whatever it was going to be. And to be honest, no football club tries to operate that way. So yeah, look, I think
it's quickly on that one, Connor. Didn't you say to me? Did you say to me on with me and Johnny on Football Inc. a couple of weeks ago that Tottenham have got the most cash in the bank of any Premier League club, and it's still historically low? And what was that number? 68 million or something, or 62 million or something?
79 million as of the last set of accounts. But for Tottenham, that is low. So it's the highest in the Premier League. Liverpool were at 8 million at the end of last year, right, in terms of cash, just as an example. So, yeah, I mean, 79 is low for Tottenham. We've historically been higher than that, but that's obviously because our model has been to basically have no owner financing and to use cash flow that's generated from the football club to finance the operations and all of the property investments as well. So it makes sense, I suppose, in the past that our cash flow has been higher than others. But yeah, look, I think on Eze it's good news. I think, I see on X people already saying, look, we need to do it right now. I mean, most of the players don't come back from training, I don't think, until the 3rd or 4th of July, I think I read today. I think Tottenham likely will look to trigger the transfer in July anyway, because then it falls into our next set of accounts rather than the current year's ones. And so, look,
how important is that?
There's a chance it will happen.
I'll stick with you, Connor. Just how important is that? I've been chewing that over with Johnny today on Football Inc. about other clubs. and the fact that it's a damp squibble window, right? Like Liverpool came out of the traps hot. I think, again, you mentioned this when you came on, that Liverpool's end of financial year was May. Is that right, if I'm not mistaken?
Right. Yeah, that's
and
right.
So they're already in there next year. And so that maybe explains why they're more willing to just dump a load of cash, because they're spending like money grows on trees. Now, Manchester City has spent 500 million quid since January, give or take, but they're not in any kind of predicaments anyway, unless there's legal issues with their whatever 115 charges. And by the way, the delay on that is a disgrace to football. But with regards that, I've been sitting there chewing over whether or not this kind of damp squib of a like mid to late June or mid June of nothing happening really anywhere, is that because the football clubs don't know whether you're a buyer or a seller, whether you should be playing or paying the sort of numbers that Liverpool seem to be paying and receiving, by the way, for like Kwanzaa, for players that are going out, they're paying top money and they're getting top money. But then elsewhere, we're seeing like people sitting on their hands with regards, 68 million quid for Gyökeres or 65 million for Sesko. It's not a lot historically for two of the best up and coming strikers in the game. And I wasn't sure whether the weighting of the rationale as to why people are not doing the business yet, whether it should be more because no one knows whether it's a buying market or a selling market, or because everyone's just waiting until July the 1st when they don't have that FFP sort of problem that will hit them in December, because they have to obviously get their accounts ready and send off to the Premier League right by December for the FFP thing. You do it in July the 1st. And so are we expecting, like in your opinion, are we expecting some like chaos to ensue on July the 1st, really, is my question.
Can I add to that, Connor?
Of course.
Because FFP, PSR isn't an issue with Spurs.
So not with Tottenham. Yeah.
Is it not beneficial if, depending on what sort of profit the club have made over the 12 months, that money is spent to bring that figure down for tax purposes before the end of June? When
to be honest, yeah, I mean, look, I think there's a few points. Let me do your one first, Lubo, because it's the most immediate one. I think on that one, look, I think, to be honest, given where Tottenham's depreciation cost is and where their real profit after that, which we all know is not a real charge, it's just an accounting charge, right? Given where that takes us, I suspect that even though we're expecting an increased revenue this year, obviously as a result of playing more home games, having more non-match day events and all of that type of stuff, the bottom line profit number before tax will not be very high, right? We've made losses when you look at that number for the last 3 years. This year, I'm guessing we'll probably be around break even or just sort of single digits, maybe just into double digits. So, I don't think that there'll be that concerns about, the tax implications, because then there's probably a whole host of other things we'll then take as a deduction when it comes to the tax charge. Football clubs typically don't pay a lot of tax when it comes to sort of corporation tax. So I don't think they're that worried about that. I think, to be honest, the reason why, so to sort of answer your first question, Sean, which was, are we that fussed about pushing it into next year? So from a PSR perspective, we're not, right? Because we're completely fine from a PSR perspective. Equally, Palace are completely fine from a PSR perspective. So they're not going to try and drive us to get it done by the end of June, because they want to catch it in this year's numbers rather than it being pushed out. So from that side of things, I think, both clubs are completely fine. I think, to be honest, the driver behind sort of pushing it out a bit is just because businesses like to push out costs if they can, right? Tomorrow's problem is not today's problem. And so the extent to which you can just drive as much into that sort of future forecast as possible makes football clubs happier, I think. On your question around, more broadly, why has it been a bit of a damp squib so far? I think the Club World Cup has obviously confused things a little bit in terms of having, clubs playing in that. I think, if you look at the striker market specifically with Sesko and Gyökeres, I think Arsenal, to be honest, are just taking their time because they don't want to get it wrong, because it's such a monumental signing for them. It's make or break, really, in terms of pushing them on for the title. And then I think, depending on, how they act, as soon as they act, I think you're going to see a knock-on impact in terms of the other strikers available. And obviously, Liverpool and City have focused on other targets, and they're the two of the biggest spenders. Foreign clubs are pretty poor, so they're not going particularly big in terms of signings. So all in all, I do expect things to ramp up in July. What I don't think we'll see this year, which is what we saw last year, was that sort of mad end of June, let's start selling each other academy players because we're all fucked from a PSR perspective. Because actually, when you look at the PSR numbers, it's only really Villa that are in, bother. The rest are not in the same position as they were last year. There's been a bit of talk about United and things, but United will be fine. So I don't think we'll see that mad rush in June, and I think most are just taking their time a little bit more.
I do want to bring back in, because before we get into the Levy stuff, we've got a little bit of time to kill here. Not to kill, but just to chew over what else is going on. I do want to bring in Villa, because there's been a couple of links today with Tottenham to Amadou Onana, for example, and links with Emi Martinez going to Man United, and Man United's Onana going to Monaco. I'm a little bit worried. Tottenham are linked with Rashford, Tottenham are linked with Garnacho, Tottenham are linked with a bunch of Manchester United players, and I don't personally hate the idea for what it's worth at the right price point. And if Rashford was to sacrifice some of his wage to kind of lower his, to bring himself back down to a pool where even if it doesn't work out at his next club, given how much time he's got left on his career, if you come back down to 200, then you can make yourself more available in the future. I don't hate the idea of Rashford personally, especially as you've got Matisse Tel behind it. So if it doesn't work out, you've got a guy it's not like you've got a kid behind it. You've got someone that's somewhat ready-made. But anyway, my point being, I want to talk about all those things. But I do want to ask you guys the question, and have Sav is here. Hello, Sav. How you doing, mate? You okay?
Yeah, good. Sorry, I'm late. Sorry, I've been watching in the background.
That's all right, mate. No worries. I do want to ask you boys, with regard to Eze, if it was 68 million quid release fee, all paid up front, and nightmares for most clubs, but on that basis, given the sort of clubs that would be looking at him, if Tottenham are the only club that's kind of got that sort of cash available, then the fact that now that goalpost has been moved towards 60 million quid in 3 installments that might happen on July the 1st, does all of that suddenly mean that whilst Tottenham are more likely to get on board it because it's less cash degenerative, does it also open the door to about 4 or 5 other teams that also might go, yeah, I'll get on board that, and then it becomes a preference bid for the player who may see more opportunity, more likelihood of trophies, more probability of success from one of the other candidates that otherwise couldn't compete on the cash degenerative argument that was being made before. I wonder whether or not this is a double-edged sword. Like, on the one hand, it's good news that Palace are likely and willing to kind of be more malleable in this situation, but in so doing, it could also open the door to others.
Flexible is the word, Sean.
Flexibility of thought, yeah. Flexibility of options, yeah.
The question is who, right?
Sorry, what was that, Connor?
No, I was saying, sorry, Lee, but I was just saying, I suppose the question is who, right? Who else? Who else
Chelsea,
is in for Eze?
Chelsea always
there was
sniffing
talk
around.
of City a couple of years ago, wasn't there? But I'm not sure they're, given the signings they've already made, I'm not sure they're going to go that way.
Would Liverpool do it to replace Luis Diaz? I don't know. I mean, there's a Arsenal might be looking for someone to replace Martinelli. Martinelli looks like he might be out the door. I don't know. I just think that Tottenham are not the only candidate that would want a player of Eze's standard. And now that suddenly the price point is a little bit more, and the structure of it's a little bit more, as I say, malleable for people, amenable for people, I just worry that this news is good news, but it's also maybe bad news given Daniel Levy's propensity to kind of assume that no one else is ever fighting for the signature.
Well, when you look at Liverpool, the money they've paid for Florian Wirtz, these teams are not averse to paying a 60 million or a 60, even if it was 68. I think Liverpool, if they wanted Eze, would make an offer. Eze's a Spurs fan, I'm led to believe, which hopefully will, bearing in mind we're a Champions League participating team this season, will be a big help. And as long as Levy's not stupid with the wages, then there's not, why not? Why not? We're still a big attractive club. So,
do you think it's going to get done, Ian?
Do I think it's going to get done?
Do you think Saba's going to? Do you think Eze is going to be? I'm having a second. Do you think Eze's going to be our focus, our kind of, what's the word? Statement signing, our
I think Levy's realised now, after what Heung Min came out with the other day, that he's got to perform now. Yeah. Talk is cheap. He's got to walk the walk now. So for me, I think it's important for him to show that he's serious with what he's saying and get this over the line. Because this would be a great way of saying it. I said on Sav's show the other week, we were just talking about how would you start the transfer window? And I said, well, first of all, you go out and you get Eze, and there's your statement signing. And then after that, other players that you're going for will look at the fact that Eze's come to Spurs, and that'll be a major positive. So I think they've got to make sure they get out there, Levy and Vinay, and get the deal done. Yeah, get it sorted.
Sab, I'm going to run with the Eze story for a few minutes, then I'm going to move into alternatives, what that means for one of the others, like Semenyo. Then we're going to talk a bit about Villa and United and all these other things that we've got going on. And then we're going to bring it into Daniel Levy more predominantly. Welcome to the show, mate. Hope you're okay. What a marquee signing. Thank you, Glug. I love that name, by the way. Couldn't think of what I was trying to say there. Mate, what's your thoughts? Eze, 60 million quid, 23 million, 3 times 20 million installments. It's a ratatata, isn't it? It makes it a lot easier. Surely now it's a no-brainer.
Yeah, no-brainer. Said this for years. This is a guy that I look at and I think Tottenham. I don't know why. Sometimes it's, do you know what I mean? Like you look at a player and you go, yeah, we used to have Eze's. We used to have entertainers. We used to have these players that would get on the ball and you don't know what they're going to do. And probably most of the time he doesn't know what he's going to do. And now, as I've said, I find this squad we've got at the moment really boring. Like a lot of nice footballers, but there's no one there that does something different, Sean. So for me, I think Eze's a no-brainer. If it is 3 lots of 20 million, then I'm not sure whose mate he is anymore. I'm not sure whether Daniel Levy is your mate, Sean, or Lubo's, because Lubo's starting to get more and more on board with the Levy train, isn't he?
100% he is, yeah.
He definitely is.
He thinks he's telling me on Levy out. I think I'm like manipulating him into Levy in. He doesn't realise it, mate. I'm grooming him.
Yeah, listen, as he said to me on my show yesterday, he said, I love Levy. He's given me Romero. He's given me Gray. He's given me Berghvall. He loves him. But listen, I think that's a deal that Daniel Levy should be all over. And listen, after that, it was like a Tinder date, wasn't it? That interview the other day between the two of them. It was like literally like, you hang up. No, you hang up. No.
Yeah, it's like, soppy bollocks. It was horrible.
But after coming out and saying the Europa League isn't enough, we want to win titles, and cool, great. We love to hear that. But okay, go out and buy Eze's. Go and get Paulinia's. Go and get a Semenyo and or an Mbuemo as well. Get these players over the line. Start everyone up from having a go at Levy, and then turn around and say, right, to the manager, hey, look what you've got. Look what you've got now. We've given you Paulinia. We've given you Eze. We've given you an Mbuemo. Now that makes people like Romero probably turn around and be a little bit more, okay, all right, I like what's happening here. It gives more belief. I think James Maddison, he would love to link up play with someone like Eze as well. I think it's a no-brainer, Sean. I think it's an absolute no-brainer, and I think it would be the best signing this club has made for
10 years.
A decade or so. I genuinely can't think of another signing in the last 10 years where I've gone, yes. So I'll take him all day, every day. I've heard he's a Spurs fan. I heard that he was offered to Spurs last year, but Ange didn't want him. I don't know how true that is. So yeah, get him in, give him the keys to White Hart Lane. And all of a sudden, I think more people will want to watch Spurs again.
Do we know? I'm selfishly asking this because for the last 7 months, I've been promising the Tottenham fan base, with my reputation on the line, that we were going to have a club's record signing and or a new club's highest earner. And I think if it gets done at 60 million quid, I think I'd just about miss the boat on the club record signing thing. Leva, you might be able to help me out on this one.
No, 60 million will be a club record signing. I think Slank is 57 before add-ons.
And what about? Do we know what his salary is going to be? Am I going to be able to kill two birds with one stone with the Eberechi Eze rock that's coming in, the bomber? Is that going to make me a legend for getting it right 2 out of 2 within 2 weeks of the window opening? Am I going to go down?
You reckon what? It'll go on 200K a week?
I don't know. That's what I'm asking. Yeah, I don't know. What do we think? Surely, is he not worthy of that? Is he not? Worthy of club's highest earner status?
I mean, when we talk about a club record wage, are we not including?
No. I didn't say club record. But I said new club's highest earner, which is concurrent, current players only. So if Sonny goes and Romero goes before that deal's done, and the club that number drops significantly, and then so I've played my cards right with this one.
That's fair enough. I was thinking more in terms of what Kane finished on. Kane was earning in his last year, and I think with bonuses it was around 300 a week. So I just
was it really?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, it was X amount for goals, I think, included as well. So, and absolutely, because Kane deserved it. Kane's a world class player.
Of course.
Do I think Eze will be the highest earner? Quite possibly, because I wouldn't. It wouldn't surprise me if Son and Romero both leave this summer. And I think Spurs, as I said to you before, I think there'll be a lot of ins and outs this transfer window. I think it's going to be big money coming in and big money going out, because I think Sonny and Romero, for me, you should be getting 100 million minimum, shouldn't you, for the two of them? I would think.
Yeah, 100%. I want to ask you.
Really quickly. I was listening while I was just finishing up my dinner, and I agree with what you guys were saying. I think the moment the 1st of July hits, I think you're going to see a snowball. I really do, and add to the fact that I believe that a day before the 1st, Paratici might be in post. So I just feel like all the dots have connected on that front as well. I think what Connor was saying about players are on holiday. I listen. I think it's gonna be a good summer. I don't know. I've just got this. I think it's gonna be a good summer.
Let me ask you. We are gonna. I do before we get to the Levy debate, because I'm sure there's going to be a big debate here. Before I get into that full two-footed, I do want to ask about. So before we move to that, I want to we'll talk a little bit about Man United and Villa, because I think that, like I say, there's some stories out today that Tottenham are looking at Amadou Onana. Tottenham are looking at a Danish player as well out in Genoa. Like traditional sixes, Paulinho is available apparently for 30 million quid. Man United is sniffing around. Doesn't make any sense to me. Why would United want him when they're not going to get rid of Casemiro, who's on a massive wage, 1 year left, and also they've got Ugarte. Paulinho isn't just a carbon copy of those guys. So. But he's also maybe going back to Fulham. A lot of people, Sava, me and you have spoken. I think we were probably the genesis, if I'm entirely honest, mate, on your show of creating that. If we've got money to burn at Bayern Munich, maybe not with Giselle. How about
get Paulinho? Yeah.
Everyone now talks about Paulinho, but we haven't been linked with him. Anyway, we'll come back to that in a second. Before I do, I just want to ask you guys about Daniel Levy, right? Like when he said what he said. Failure is not an option. Okay, opportunist thing to say after you just won something. You want to win the Premier League, you want to win the Champions League. Okay, cool. Talking cheap, walk the walk. Is he saying that stuff because he knows that there's money coming in to support the things like the Eze, and that he knows that is an absolute win? The PR win for him in the short term is a win for him getting that done on the back of some relative smaller micro level PR wins with regards to tifos and scarves and the ticket thing with the staff versus Man United, the trophy, everything. The wind is in his direction at the moment. Then there was the 2-week break when we didn't know whether Ange was going to be here or not, and people were getting frustrated. Now all that kind of done, he didn't really lose too much sort of ground with that now that it's finished. I still think that he's still walking into a lose-lose situation in all likelihood, because half the fan base think that Ange Postecoglou is a fucking martyr, and that unless Thomas Frank, which he probably won't, recreates something similar to the start that Ange Postecoglou had, then you'll have the people saying, "Why did you sack him? He was our best, most successful guy, or whatever, in 40 years." But the last time you heard from Daniel Levy happened to be coincidentally an opportune moment when it was after 10 games, and he said, "We've got our Tottenham back." And then from there, we did get our Tottenham back. We went on a horrendous run, and it was shit show for a long time, right? So I just wonder whether or not your thoughts, guys, and I want to get you all involved here. I'll start with you, Connor. Was him saying with Vinay, what he said, was it just an opportune moment of an opportunist to say that, we've got ambitions to do this because the wind is in his sails and he's got a bit of form doing that? Or was it, because it's brave if he did it, right? It's fucking brave to do that in the middle of the start of a transfer window, because there's not much time before you end up looking like a donut if you don't back it up. Or is he saying it because he actually means that this summer's going to be a summer that sort of thing isn't going to come back with mud on his face in about 2 months' time? If that makes sense.
Yeah, it does. It's a good question. I think there's probably a bit around Donna Cullen going, Vinay joining, getting a bit better at comms, and knowing that fans want to hear that your target is to challenge for the top honours. And I don't think we've ever said that before, right? As a club, that we're targeting winning the Premier League and winning the Champions League. Now, obviously, we're going to debate at length whether that's likely to happen in the short, medium, or long term. But I think there's probably a bit of that. I think there's definitely no doubt that they've been looking for investment, right? They didn't say it with this year's accounts, but obviously last year's accounts, they engaged Rothschild to look for inward investment. So, your thought would be that there is some form of inward investment coming at some point. I think that the reason why that's probably taken longer than they maybe anticipated is because in some ways a full takeover is actually easier than getting a minority investment, because actually, you've only got to look at John Textor's comments at Palace and the fact that, he now wants to go out, not only because of the multi-club stuff, but the reason he wants to leave Palace is because he's got so fed up with only being a minority investor and not being able to have full majority on decision making. Yeah. And so, if Tottenham went up for sale, I've got no doubt, provided the valuation is right, and the valuation is definitely not 5 billion, by the way, and we can talk about that later as well. But provided the valuation was right, they would sell Tottenham tomorrow. It would take no time at all to sell Tottenham. So, you've only got, and we've got precedent for that in looking at other big six clubs, right? You look at when Man United came up for an investment, you look at when Chelsea came up for sale, there were a number of suitors looking at both. So, Tottenham have got so many things going for it from a buyer's perspective, and top 6 Premier League clubs don't come up for sale often. So, they would sell it tomorrow. So look, yeah, maybe he does know. I mean, look, the challenge I think has always been with ENIC and the ENIC model, and I don't want to get into it too much now before we're going to have the full debate, is that they don't put in enough money from their own resources comparatively to every single other football club in the Premier League and across Europe. So until that changes, and I don't think, and to be honest, this is where I think, to be fair, Levy ends up getting a lot of the stick, but actually it's Joe Lewis for me and the overall ENIC model that deserves more, because Joe Lewis is the one that controls the purse strings. Levy doesn't have a whole host of cash himself that he could chuck in. A lot of his wealth is actually wrapped up in Tottenham. Until that changes, the only alternative is a takeover or inward investment. So perhaps that is coming, and that's why he's made these statements. We'll see. But I completely agree with the point you make, Sean. Around, it's interesting timing, right? Because this is the one. If he come out and said that in October, he's got some grace on that, right? Because people go, well, January was a bit hard to do anything, and then he's got until the following summer. But he's come out and made that sort of statement at the start of summer, and so
it's a bold move, mate.
Very quickly,
it's a bold move, boys. And you go on, Savio.
So listen, I agree with everything Connor said there. What I think is going to be really interesting is, I think it's going to be the dynamics from the fans now. Obviously the Ange sacking, nothing at Spurs ever puts us all on the same page, does it? Like we literally can't.
Maybe an Eze transfer would, though, right?
Yeah, hopefully. I mean, look, I think you've got 2 problems that come with what Levy said. First of all, I saw, I think Tom in your chat said he can't win. If he had said, well, we're looking at top 6, fans go, oh, he's got no ambition. If he talks about titles, people go, oh, we've got to win titles. I think we've got to take the whole we want to win titles and Champions Leagues. I hope people don't just suddenly go, right, we're in a title race this season. I hope that people don't think it just suddenly goes from 17th to we're now playing off against City, Arsenal and Liverpool in one summer. So I think people have to be patient and let that build. Now, I know people will come back. Lubo's probably clucking at the bit to go, 24 years, Sava, 24 years. I know he's going to be coming out with
that. He's turning green.
24 years. But what I will say is this. We have got this army of fans now that they're happy to finish bottom half as long as they win a cup, Sean. Right? We've got that army of fan base. Now, for me, I've said this year, do I want to win trophies? Well, I want to win a trophy every year. Are we going to win a trophy every year? No one wins a trophy every year, unless your name is probably like Real Madrid or something. Like, you know what I mean? No one wins a trophy every year. But this season, even if Frank got us 5th or 6th, and I'm not going to, by the way, I'm not going to tie my opinion to the poll yet until I see what the window brings. But even if he got us 5th and 6th, couple of good cup runs out the Champions League stage, I think, if I can see that we're going in the right direction he's building, that's good for me. A lot of our fan base, though, now are going to go, there you go, that's shit. That's shit. Ange won a trophy. That's shit. The because we've got people actively saying the league doesn't matter. And I think it's very short-sighted. I think it's very narrow-minded for these people that want Levy to do better in the transfer market, but then say finishing higher up the league where you earn more money doesn't go hand in hand with that. Right. So I think it's going to be really interesting, Sean, to see what happens from that perspective and how many of the people actually think that winning a title or trying to win a title happens in 1 year. So that's just my
you know what, Sam?
Spin on it.
I'm going to come to you now, Lubo. I actually, last night I did a show. It was a drunk show. I told everybody in the chat to go and get 4 or 5 beers. We were plastered doing it together. But I said to the boys, I said to James Flower, who came on, I think he's in the chat. Shout out to you, mate. You were great. And Luke, Jack Grealish. I said to the guys, what's the of the squad that we currently have? Let's presume that title ambition is 3 years out. Right? Of the squad that we currently have, what's the? Sorry, Dan. I was trying to think of the other person. It was Dan. Dan E came on, and it was great. He was great as well. Oh, so what's in a 3 year time window? Let's give him 3 years. Of the current squad, how many of the players in the current squad are capable of being a part of a team or a squad in 3 years that has the potential to be, not to win the league, but to be in the conversation like we were in 2017? I was asking, is Vicario, and I think universally the chat said no, he isn't good enough. Udogie, most people said yes. Porro, most people said yes. Romero, most people said yes. Van der Ven, yes. Bentancur, people were sort of relegating him to squad status. Bissouma, no. Berghvall, yes. Front 3, none of them, no. So if Daniel, I hear your point, mate, and I think it's important to kind of qualify it. He didn't give a timeline. He wasn't saying we're going to be in a title challenge now. Yeah. But within a few years, how many of this squad are capable or good enough potentially to be a part of it? Not many. Not many. Maybe the backline, if used correctly and taught correctly and trained correctly, maybe some of those guys could. But as you move up the field, fewer and fewer. Lubo, just want to ask you the same question, mate. Regarding Daniel Levy's statement, the timing of it is so precarious for him, right? Because he said it just at the genesis of a window, and people are going to hang their hat on him. So does that suggest that he's just being an opportunist, or does it suggest that maybe, to Connor's point, maybe there's information out there, maybe the funding's done, we just don't know about it officially yet because of NDAs? And maybe Eze's the first of a few that will give everyone a little bit more confidence that this time he means it.
If we're basing it on the fact that we're keeping the status quo, then for me, it's opportunist. I think that actions talk louder than words. I think if he'd have gone out in this coming transfer window, if he'd have held back his statement till first week of September, where Spurs have had a brilliant transfer window and they've shown real ambition, and then come out with that, then I think I would take it more seriously. And I just think, you mentioned before about ambition. What is ambition? Tell you what ambition looks like for me. And in terms, you wouldn't need to manipulate me, Sean, as you groom me, as you're trying to do. I would naturally, if he basically, I've just put 7 points here. He's got an obsessive nature.
Sorry, you've written down. So you've taken notes.
I've written 7 notes, 7 things down here, 7-point plan that would get me on board. With Daniel Levy.
Does every single one of them just say start Archie Gray at number 6? Is that what all 7 of them are?
No, that's Thomas Franks, baby. He will do that. Don't worry. Right, further on here. Number 1 starts with him and the ambition for the club, and to turn his obsessive nature from non-footballing activities to the club, and have that drive and determination to be the best on the football pitch, not just have the best grounds and have the best training grounds and have the best property portfolio, but to actually turn it to the football team. Secondly, build a top team around you where you are bringing in experts. Levy is not an expert on football. We all know that. I'm sure he doesn't pretend to be either. Bring a top team the way Branson brings in experts from each industry to run his different businesses. 3, put together a short, mid and long-term strategy with your team of where you want to get to as a football club. I don't believe in 25 years he's ever done that, because for me, he's shown no interest in the first team. Number 4.
Just quickly, I know you've got your 5 more to go, 6 more to go. The 3 that you've given so far are subjective. they're subjective.
Okay.
Show more ambition, care more, prioritize this. Like specifics, mate. We need specifics.
To be fair to Lubo, they're subjective, driven by facts, though, right?
What I'm saying, he doesn't care.
Almost everything is subjective.
It
is subjective, driven by facts, though. The fact being that, the amount of money Enix have put into the club averages out of £5 million per year over their tenure, which is the lowest in the Premier League by some distance. So that supports
why should a £1 billion business be like subsidised by its owners?
Because that's the way football clubs work.
But that's a problem for that's a problem. It's a problem.
Yeah, but it's the reality of the situation, isn't it?
Yeah, but to be angry with someone who's taken a business from £25 million to £5 billion and saying that you need to put your hand in your pocket, I think that's a problem. The anger shouldn't be at the owner of your club. This is my point I've always made, is that the anger of Tottenham fans should be redirected towards the people that allow that sort of bollocks to be a part of football in the first place. In no other walk of life, no other industry, is there that situation where multi-billion-pound operations are propped up by investors. At some point, a business is a business and has to stand on its own 2 feet. And I think that Daniel Levy shouldn't be chastised because everybody else can't do it that way, and that the people that set the rules don't have the credibility or the skill set to be able to set in motion enforceable laws that are actually that are worth the paper they're written on. I think that the anger is positioned wrongly, is my take on ownership.
Yeah, I mean, just on that point very quickly, sorry, Lou, but just on that, I mean, look, without even getting into the argument that football's different to other industries, in other industries, if a private equity fund was to purchase a company, right, you would expect them to invest more than what Levy has equivalently invested into Tottenham to get the sort of return that Levy is going to get on Tottenham and Enix are going to get on Tottenham when they sell it. So when they've put in total what, £250 million, right?
Yeah, but he wasn't a private equity firm. But he wasn't a private equity firm. He bought a struggling club at 25 million quid and turned it into the £5 billion that it is now valued at. He's not a private equity.
Some of it is driven by what's happened in the Premier League, right? In terms of Premier League revenues, and you've got the biggest club in London outside of, at the time he purchased it, outside of Arsenal, in terms of.
But you can make that same argument for argument for energy companies.
But the point is, to be fair,
sorry,
the point I'm making, I suppose, is that the level of return on the investment that ENIC have made is much, much larger than you'd typically expect for an investor going into another company. I mean, you brought up the other industry point, and the fact that we ask owners to prop up football clubs in a way that we don't in other industries, whereas actually in another industry, you would expect a private equity firm, if that's the example, to put in more investment to get the sort of level of return that ENIC is going to get on Tottenham. So I don't think that point is completely true.
I disagree. I mean, private equity are not the people. Private equity comes in to take advantage of they're not the innovator of value. They're the benefactor of it through just their ability to manipulate money. If you look at industries like, I don't want to take this all the way down this path already, it'd be pretty boring. But if you look at certain industries like energy, for example, solar, like how much money has Elon Musk made? How much of that was the benefactor of government grants, for example, right? So, but at the end of the day, he isn't a private equity company. He isn't a private equity firm that's coming in to take advantage of their ability to manipulate money. He was someone that came in and bought a company, a football club, and he might have seen the writing on the wall with regards to the opportunity, because there's a different relationship with the customers in football. The loyalty there is there like perennially, but I don't think that the anger should be aimed towards a chairman for creating a business that's self-sustainable, because other people have owners that are willing to supplement the income and the revenue streams of the competition. I think that the anger of the fans at the inability to create success should be aimed at the rule makers, the lawmakers, and the fact that our competition are doing everything they can with different relationships with money to be able to circumvent those rules. That's my only point. Like, if you're frustrated with Daniel Levy, I think that the bigger picture here is that the rules are like the game of football, the economics of football are a disproportionately inflated recognition of reality, because the people that are bought in have got different levels of resources than what Daniel Levy does. That's not Daniel Levy's fault. That's the fault of the lawmakers.
Some of that's true, right? And the problem is rule breakers are always going to be smarter than rule makers, right? Happens in all walks of life, and unfortunately, that's the reality of the situation we live in. You know, in an ideal world, if we lived in a situation where there was proper rules in place that completely supported sustainability and weren't easy to break, then perhaps that argument would hold true. What I suppose the point that people that are critical of the model would make is that when you are going to turn 250 million into 3.5 billion and get a 15 to 20 times return, it's not outrageous to expect a little bit more ambition in terms of investing in the playing squad.
Maybe.
What's Lubo's last 4 points though? That's what.
Oh yeah, sorry. Yeah, sorry, Lubo.
Yeah, people of YouTube want to know.
Go on, tell us your subjective things, mate. Tell us what you think he's not doing enough of that he could be doing more of.
Okay. All right. Levy's been known to leave transfers right to the death, hasn't he? I'm talking about 25 years here. I'm not talking about 2 or 3. I'm talking about 25 years. Point 4, buy early to give your manager time to integrate the players. This is something that Ferguson always demanded from David Gill and got. Levy is quite happy because he's always looking for a deal, for an opportunity. This is his mentoring by Joe Lewis, who is a trader. He's a trader. I wish Levy would have actually followed his father a bit more, who learnt about the product, which was menswear, and built a great brand, which was Mr. Byright, a very successful brand financially. I wish he'd have actually learned, because what ENIC have tried to do is beat football, play the game in a different way to how football plays it, and to beat the system. And they failed miserably, because the club was worth, just worked out, They bought 29% of Alan Sugar's shares for 22 million when they initially bought the club before all the share issues, which has taken their investment up to 250 million. The club then, based on 29% at 22 million, is based 75.8 million pounds. That's where the club was. That was where the club was when they bought it. I think it was December 2000. We're now looking at, I mean, Forbes have valued it at what, 3 billion, I think, realistically. I mean, you know, you can't, Levy's looking at 5 billion. Tottenham Hotspur is not worth the same as a Manchester United. There's no, I just don't, you know. It's like having a lesser chocolate producing company being valued at the same as Nestle or, you know, one of those. Cadbury.
Why did you choose chocolate as your analogy there?
Why? Because my pal, far enough, who I go to football with, worked for many years for the club that was sort. You had those three at the top.
Worked for Cadbury's, did he?
No, he didn't. He worked. No, I've got a cousin who worked for Cadbury's, but he worked for like a company that was top of the next division, because those three are way out on their own. Right. And we are not. United are way out in front of Tottenham as a worldwide brand. So that was the analogy I was trying to use.
Fair enough.
Number 4, just going back. Buy early to give a manager time to integrate. 5, buy the right players. Buy the right players at the right prices, whether they're 5 million, like a Dele Alli, or a 75 million, like a Van Dijk. Whatever it is that's right for the manager.
Of course. Hang
on. But he doesn't, because he looks for opportunities.
What are we doing here?
He looks
obvious. It's obvious. Come on,
Sean.
mate.
Sean,
okay, carry on.
You're trying to close me down because I'm right on these points.
You're saying obvious things. Buy the right player at the right price.
Hang on. Hang on. Number 6. Number 6. Pay the correct wages. Then maybe you might get better players. And number 7, which has hampered us tremendously, is sell at the right time at the right price. And if you put all of those together,
listen, guys, if you haven't heard of business schooling here from Lubo, like there's nothing I've ever heard before. But business 101: buy low, sell high. Anyway, back to you, Daniel Levy. Let's see what you can do with that. What are we doing here, mate? You're just pointing out obvious. Sell the right person at the right time. Give me some details. That's obvious, bro. What are we doing here?
Okay. All right. Why the right players at the right time? Sadio Mane, prime example. Right?
Did he not sell Harry Kane at the right time?
Don't be greedy. Did
he sell Harry Kane at the right time?
Yes, we did. No team could lose 85 million. I don't believe any business would turn around and say, yeah, great, you carry on for another year, we'll take a drop of 85 million. Absolutely no way they did the right thing.
Can I just I feel like a lot of your points are very, very on point. I do think some of it though is very subjective. Like when we're talking about buying the right players, I've always said I fail to believe that Daniel Levy is telling the club which players to sign. I've like on the one hand, right, we're saying, and listen, I'm trying to be balanced here. I've got my reasons why I don't like Daniel Levy, and I know they're very different to the reasons you don't like him, Lubo. But we say these things like, buy the right players, cool. We then turn around and say, oh, but Daniel Levy doesn't know anything about football. So am I led to believe then that Daniel Levy is the one talking to all the agents, the intermediaries? Am I to believe that Daniel Levy is the one turning around and going, actually, you know who I want? I want Ndombele. You know who I want? I don't want a 20, 30 million pound striker like Santiago Jimenez. I want 60 million in Solanke. I don't buy that. I feel like we can have a pop at the people he's employed to do that. So we can have a go at Levy for employing the wrong people. But I fail to believe that Daniel Levy's signing all of these footballers. But it has to work both ways. I always bring you up on this, Lubo. If we're going to say then about Daniel Levy's got to buy at the right price and the right players at the right time, I always give you the example of an Archie Gray. Well, was signing Archie Gray for 35, 40 million, was that the right time, the right price? You back that. You back that like your life depends on it. when lots of
I wouldn't go that far.
No, Lubo, you do. Lubo, hang on. But you said buy the right players at the right price.
Mm-hmm.
But that only seems to apply if you don't like the player. I've said this, so this is where Sean and I have had many years rows down the years. Not so much anymore because we meet in the middle. I think we've kind of found our equilibrium, Sean. But we've had this round many a times where, from my point of view, what the majority of fans who don't like Levy, any time a player doesn't work out, it's Levy signing. That's a Levy signing. When it's a player we like Micky van der Ven or Romero, I've never heard anyone say Levy signing. They only apply it to the ones that they don't like or that don't work out.
All right. Let me clarify what I'm saying. How about giving a manager a proper budget and not
like
making
400 million quid over the last 2 years?
But they do get a proper budget, Lubo. This is the thing. So this is the thing. I want to go back to one of your other points. And I feel like, and sorry if I'm talking too much here. Sorry.
No, you're not. You're not.
I do feel like.
By the way, just quickly, Connor, I know you're relatively new to the YouTube game. If you want to jump in, because if you wait to be asked, you'll get kind of left by.
Don't worry. I will. Don't worry.
Don't be polite. Don't be. I can always tell who's new to YouTube because they sit there and they're all very well mannered. And the old, we're all going, let me jump in. Yeah. Look, let me go to your point there, Luba, about wages. Right now, I have this problem. I have a problem when people speak in sweeping generalizations. I hear all the time, Spurs don't pay big enough wages to get footballers. But then when we broke it down yesterday and we saw actually how many players at Chelsea or Liverpool were actually on bigger wages than Tottenham players, right? There was only like 3 at both clubs that were actually being paid higher than our biggest earner. Now, yes, they've got more players that are on that 100 grand, etc. But what we can't do is I fail to believe, that Tottenham Hotspur, for what we pay, 150, 160 grand, other than Son, who's 190. I fail to believe that we couldn't do better with the signings with that pay structure. I feel like it's a really lazy, sweeping generalization that apparently Tottenham don't pay wages. I think what
I'll
you
come in
mean,
on this one then. There you go. I'll come in on this one on wages. Yeah.
Okay.
I think I don't think. Sorry, I didn't mean to cut across you. But look, I think on wages, I don't think necessarily the top earners are the issue. You made the point yourself. I think it's that sort of middle bracket of between 100 and 200,
sure,
which is causing us an issue more so. I mean, look, if you look at wages compared to the Big Six average since we moved into the new stadium, we've spent £600 million less than the Big Six average on wages in 5 years. So, sure. I mean, which is over £100 million a year, right, in terms of our wage bill comparatively to the rest of the Big Six. That is a problem, right? That just 42% wage to revenue ratio, which when we look at next year will be even lower. It's going to be, I'm guessing, anywhere from 35 to 40%. That's a problem in terms of attracting players. Now, it's not all about money, obviously. I think that, certain players are going to not only be driven by money, but there is a clear correlation between attracting players and paying wages and success.
Well, hang on.
Until we change.
Let me challenge you on that, because I think Sam and I were speaking this the other day. If it was all about money, I know you're not saying it is, but if money was the sort of predominant driver, then everyone would be in Saudi. They're not.
And not necessarily, because there's cultural and geographical differences with going to live in Saudi, right?
But if money was the number one force of why people join a football club, I'm not saying it's irrelevant. I'm not even saying it's not even remotely irrelevant. It's definitely a factor. But for me, I think that Tottenham fish in a certain size pond, and if there were 2 players, but bearing in mind that if the gap between where we are and where we want to be is that we need the best players, then the best players unless you're going and finding the best gems that become the best players within your own ecosystem, if you're competing for Rayan Cherki, if you're competing for Mark Gahey, if you're competing for Florian Wirtz, even if Tottenham were willing to say, we'll match Bayer Leverkusen will match the 120 million quid and will pay Florian Wirtz 300 grand a week. Will pay you more. Florian Wirtz still chooses Liverpool.
I agree with you. Yeah. I agree.
Because there is a higher probability of those guys winning trophies more frequently.
Sustained success of trophies. Yeah. Look,
it's a difficult chicken and egg to sort of like, how do you win the trophies to be able to compete? Unless you have the best players, how do you get the best players if the best players are looking for the teams that win the most trophies? It's a chicken and the egg, but money's important, but it's not it's not the only factor. And I would ask you this, Connor. Name me 5 players that Tottenham have missed out on in the last 5 years because we didn't pay the wages.
It's difficult to name specific examples because you could argue we weren't even in the conversation for certain players, right? And therefore it never even gets to our attention that we were having a debate about, this player's turned us down because of wages because we just weren't even in the conversation. I think the point you raise on Saudi, I think is partly relevant, but there is a big part of people don't want to live in Saudi Arabia, right, as well. And so, you get to a certain level of earning a certain amount of money. Once you go above that, am I going to compromise on putting my family and kids in Saudi Arabia and all of these types of things? Maybe not, right? So, I think you've only got to look at Villa and Newcastle, who've had massive growth in their wages over the last few years. And what's happened with both of those clubs, they've become more successful, right, by spending money on wages. So
what Newcastle haven't?
What have Villa won?
Yeah, but they've had to come on. That's such an you're going to have sexuals making that argument for God knows how many years. They haven't won anything yet, but they're coming from a point.
The people that are coming
from Daniel Levy, where they were in the Championship, right? The
people that have a problem with Daniel Levy tell me that the main problem is we don't win enough trophies. And I say, okay, but 92% of all trophies won since Daniel Levy took over, give or take, have been won by 5 teams. In the last 15 years, 75% of all trophies have been won by 2 teams. 2 teams that came in and had a disproportionate, abnormal relationship with money. Where if the problem with Daniel Levy is all about the lack of trophies, then is Daniel Levy responsible for the lack of trophies at Aston Villa? Because Aston Villa used to be just as successful as Tottenham Hotspur were. What about West Brom? What about Leeds? What about Nottingham Forest? What about West Ham? What about Ipswich? What about those teams?
Can I just quickly interject there, Sean?
Yeah, of course you can.
I just want to quickly interject. It's interesting that we talk about Villa and Newcastle there because Newcastle United have spent considerably less than us in the last 6 years, right? Since we moved into the stadium. And they have a wage bill that's 20 million.
They've only been under PIF ownership for 3 years, to be fair.
Okay, sure. But even under that ownership, go and look at how much they've spent compared to us in those 3 years, right? So they've spent nowhere near what we've spent, and their wage bill is 20 million less than Tottenham Hotspur's. So if we're going to use Newcastle as the example, now don't get me wrong, I fully expect that to change at Newcastle. I fully expect now the PSR and all that, their 3-year cycle or whatever. I'm not going to pretend I'm an expert of all that, but I fully expect that to change. But my question is this. Keep talking about wages. We do this all the time. But Sean is bang on. I said this whenever I see people talk about footballers they'd like to see come to Spurs. I just feel like they don't understand the kind of food chain within football, if that makes sense. I've said this all along. And Lubo, when I was in that WhatsApp group with everyone and we had that massive debate, it was a few months back, people going, oh, if you pay the money, they come. And I'm sitting there going, no, that's not necessarily true. People are going, oh, just go to Joshua Kimmich and offer him 400 grand a week. Sorry, Joshua Kimmich isn't leaving Bayern Munich, one of the biggest clubs in the world, to come to Tottenham if he's a first-team regular and a German international. Right? We get the Matisse Tells from Bayern Munich because they're not first-team regulars and he's not a big name. Right?
Okay, but hang on.
Right? I see this all the time. We do this with so many. Somebody said the other day in my chat, oh, we should have been in for Wirtz. Yeah, we should have been in for Wirtz. Hi, is that Florian Wirtz's agent? Yeah, it's Tottenham Hotspur here. Has he got any interest? Politely, no, because Man City, Liverpool, and Bayern Munich all want him.
We need to talk about top of the range players.
Hang on, Lubo. Hang on. Right. Lubo, the reason we're talking about top of the range players, this is what our fans do. Have a look at when we didn't go for top of the range players, right? Last January and last summer, I think these players I'm about to mention were split across the 2 windows, right? Doué, we bid the exact same money in transfer fee and wages as PSG. Surprise, surprise, he didn't pick Tottenham, right? People go, oh, we should have paid more wages. Nah, he's going to PSG. Kolo Muani. Hang on, Lubo, right? Kolo Muani. We actually offered to pay Juventus 100% of his wages. PSG, sorry. Juventus are paying none of his wages, but he chose Juventus, right? He chose Juventus. Tomori, we offered to pay 100% of his wages to AC Milan. He turned us down. I think sometimes people have got to understand, to attract that level of player, you can't be 17th one year, 8th, 5th. You've got to be finishing in that top 4 every year and be attractive to those footballers. So, sorry, that's just my bit. I just think we're disillusioned about who we think our level. For me, is the Umbremos, the Ezes. Yeah, I don't think we're in those conversations for the Marmouches. And do you know what I mean? I don't think we're in there for the Florian Wirtz. We're not there.
That's
Look
right.
at Guehi.
You know what? Because for literally the best part of 24 years, there's been underachievement, there's been underinvestment. Now, if we talk about Newcastle United, so have you mentioned they're paying 20 million a year less? Is it
95 million they pay a year?
Okay, and we're paying 115.
Yeah, I think we're 115, 116, something like that.
Okay, work out that our revenue is I'm just going on the last year's figures, like for like, 23-24. Our revenue was 528 million, and Newcastle's was 320 million.
Yep.
Which I think was off the back of a Champions League, their Champions League participation.
Yep.
So you can see that when Connor's talking about the 600, and that's Newcastle aren't even the top. They're not part of the top 6 that you're talking about, are they, Connor? When you say 600 million less. So Newcastle are finding 95 out of 320, and we're finding 115 out of 528. I just think
that's subject to change, right? Like you have to. Like, I always feel like people that are Levy out latch on to any opportunity. The goalposts are moved. The needle is always dialing towards south, right? It's always looking towards what is in the data that can allow me the opportunity to throw a stick. When it comes to that 42%, obviously, with regards Tottenham Hotspur last season, we pivoted towards a youth-centric model of football. That doesn't mean that it's the pejorative for the forever foreseeable future. It was a pivot away when we'd gone through a mass exodus of legacy players, most of whom, not all, but most of whom were not part of the plans of most of the fans. So you lose people like Eric Dyer, you lose people like Hugo Lloris, you lose people like Ivan Perisic. Obviously, you lose Harry Kane, right? Obviously, he would have been, people would have wanted him, but the rest of them, Tanguy and Ndombele, for example, that's £10 million of salary that people think is just a write down, and that adds to that 42% number, but it was paid off as an abnormal expense. So
and that falls into this year.
Hang on, that's a fair challenge on this year.
Sorry.
That's a fair challenge on this year, i.e. that
that's what I'm saying,
one could argue that 42% is artificially lower.
It's artificially lower, right? It's artificially
because of the youth-centric model.
And the youth-centric model is a necessary curve in the trajectory. And it's not just Tottenham that are doing that. Manchester City are doing that on a different level to a different scale. But even Stefan Borson came out and said on TalkSport that like nobody is buying players for 100 million quid that are 27 or over anymore because there's no resale value. So Daniel Levy was slightly ahead of the curve on that transition towards youth-centric. He wasn't the first. He wasn't the groundbreaker on it.
Levy in,
100%. But like, my point is that Like it's like people that are pointing to the 42%. I never heard anyone in the Levy out model pointing to the fact that we didn't pay the wages 2, 3, 4 years ago. Before then, the mainstay of the argument was we don't spend the money. Then as soon as we started spending the money, then it was like, well, we can't use that argument anymore. Similarly, Ian, Connor, it used to be when this stadium first erupted. Oh, this stadium! I remember having debates. I remember having 3 years ago, 2 years ago. I remember having so many debates with people when they were saying this club is not. It's a football club. It's a football club. Now it's a sports entertainment complex. We do rugby. We do NFL. Until I outline to these people what difference does it make to you? What the fuck happens to the stadium when we're not playing football? As long as that stadium is not like impacting our ability to play football, why shouldn't you be happy that money generation? And as soon as that became like a null point, as soon as there was no argument against it, people stopped saying that. And then they started saying, no, I support the fact that the stadium generates revenue in a bunch of different factors. But now let me see, what's the next stick that I can pick up? Because that one's no longer working anymore. And it became about revenue. It became about wages in the last year. As soon as everything else, as soon as the numbers were clear that the 5 years before we moved into the stadium, the average spend was 10, 12 million, whatever it was. And the 5 years since, it's 112 million, whatever it is, an 8-9x improvement. As soon as that argument became null and void, it was like, well, now where the fuck do I go with my Levy out policy?
Let me ask you a question.
I'm not quite finished. Now it's moved to wages. And as Connor said, and I appreciate Connor's balance here, it's a snapshot in time because we were doing an exodus of legacy players that are no longer needed and no one wanted anyway apart from Harry Kane. And we pivoted to a youth-centric approach, which has been wildly accepted and adopted by other teams as well. Now, if the wage ratio revenues continue to stay low, I'll hear you guys out. But you're cherry-picking a moment in time to smack the guy with the stick, the only stick that you have left.
Right, no.
Let me just quickly, Lubo, jump in on those points. So the wage to revenue ratio this year, yes, your point is right that obviously it's artificially lower, likely as a result somewhat of the youth-centric model. But throughout the whole tenure of ENIC, our average wage to revenue has trailed the Premier League. So in their very first full year, we were at 56%. The Premier League was at 62%. And that carried on for the whole of the 24 years. You're right that people didn't make that argument as much in the past because the net spend argument pre the stadium was the easier argument to make because we were averaging only £13 million a year in the 5 years up until we opened the stadium, right, in terms of net spend. So that was a very easy argument to make. But, you know, we've got 24 years of data that shows us that the wage to revenue ratio is lower. It isn't just this year. This year is particularly bad. And to your point, people do, I take your point. People do take that argument now because actually, if you look at our net spend since the stadium opened, it's up there. You know, we're there or thereabouts with the top six, to be fair. And so, look, I think it isn't just one year. I think over the next couple of years.
If the wage to revenue ratio was higher, then our net spend would have to be lower to participate in Europe.
Not where we are. We've got a lot of room.
No,
there's obviously a little bit of a balance.
Squad cost ratios at 70%.
Yeah.
Right. So if we're
currently at 49.
Okay, but if we were spending more on wages, where our wage to revenue ratio was at 50% rather than 42%, which is what everyone seems to want to be at, or 60%, then we wouldn't be able to spend because 10% of our overall revenue is 50 million quid, give or take. Right? Squad cost ratios dictate that you can't, it's not just the wage to turnover ratio, it's the squad cost, right? Including the transfer fees. So at the end of the day, if you're robbing Peter to pay Paul, the reason why we've been able to spend £125 million circa on average for the last 5 years is in some remit because of the fact that our wage to turnover ratio is less. If your wage to turnover ratio is higher, then because of the squad cost ratios, your net spend has to be lower.
That would be true if we were closer to the limit. We're at 49%. The next closest to us is Man City at 54%, with most clubs averaging 60, 70. But
in squad cost or in
Newcastle? Yeah, on squad cost control, Villa at 86%, Newcastle 71%, Chelsea 70%, United at 66%, Liverpool 62%, Arsenal 61%, City 54%.
How can we be at 42? How can we be at 42% wages if you're saying that we're at 49%? So that's you're saying
that the squad cost control is both. The denominator includes revenue plus profit on player sales. So, we are 528 revenue profit. So we're
temporarily better because of the Harry Kane sale.
Yeah, but even in an ordinary year, because the revenue is also depressed right this year, given we've got 41.
It was depressed by 5%. Whether it's 5% on a
bigger bill. The revenue next year on my forecast will be sort of 575 million, right? So, and player sales will probably go down by the same. So we'll be about the same, right? Next year, before the Champions League money. I mean, sorry, the year that's just about to end. So, yeah. So we'll be at around 50% or something similar. So, we are. Which is massive actually in terms of that gap, between where we are and 70% is, you could go out and you could bring in 4 players on 200 grand a week, sign them for 200 million to 50 million each, and we'd still have 40 million pound of headroom from a UEFA squad cost control perspective. So we've got a huge headroom on that.
Okay.
I find the whole thing very interesting. I truly believe that, just for the record, I know people are saying, "Oh, is Sava now Levy in?" No, Sava's not Levy in. Sava's got his own bug to bear here. By the way, if I'm a scout right now, the number 6 for the Spanish under-21s, I'm signing immediately. Just putting it out there. If anyone's watching the Spanish under-21 versus England, the number 6 in centre mid. All day long. Anyway,
who is
my big issue with him?
Wait, Levy, who's the 6?
Who's the 6?
Who's the player you're talking about?
It is this guy, Javi Guerra of Valencia. Okay. 22 years of age. I'm watching him. He stands out for me. He's dictating the game. Anyway, my issue with him isn't. I don't blame him like Lubo and many other Levy-outers. They blame him for the trophies. Sorry, for me, I can't blame Daniel Levy for Man United beating Tottenham in a penalty shootout in the League Cup final. I can't blame Daniel Levy for Tottenham not turning up in the Champions League final. I can't blame him for that stuff. What I blame him for is when we are in those positions, when we are finishing 2nd, 3rd, 4th under Pochettino, when we were finishing in the top 4 under Harry Redknapp, those are the moments where I'm like, right, kick on, and we don't. That's where I blame him, is not for not kicking on, because in those moments, when we're finishing 2nd and 3rd, when we can turn around to these bigger players and say, hey, I've got a peak Harry Kane here, I've got a peak Son, Eriksen, and Dembele, Toby, Yam, Walker. Those were the moments where I think these better players that people think we can sign now, those are the moments where I think Daniel Levy and the board didn't go, you know what, let's move. This is what we do now. So my point is, I think we need to buy the next level down, which are going to be your Eze's, for examples. I don't talk like that. For example, going to be people like Eze. You then need a manager in Frank to do what Poch did, get us back into that top 4-5 regularly. And then that's when I'll be looking at Levy again and saying, all right, Daniel, you talked about winning leagues and Champions League. You've got a manager here that's got us back in the top 4-5. We're in a position where we can turn around to these players now and go, hey, look what we're building. Over to you, Daniel Coyes. That's why I'm Levy out, because he's never kicked on. I don't blame him. Like Levy, Lubo blames him for everything. Like everything. I can't do everything.
No. Listen, I'm Angel, even though he won us a trophy on Bilbao. So for me, it's not about the finals. It's about the 7 things that I've listed here. That's my issue. That's my issue.
You do say about trophies. You say he's won 2 trophies in 24 years. Well, how many finals have we been to?
Hang on, but Sav, you can get to a trophy like you can get to a final like we did with a team that's in the league appallingly poor. They were shocking this year. So you can get to a final, you can win a final, you can win a trophy. Wigan won it, Portsmouth won it, Swansea won one. What I'm saying is that for me, we are a big club. And if he put these 7 points into work, then we would have had a much stronger
Seven points of subjective waffle.
No, they're not waffle.
Win more, lose less, buy cheap, sell high.
Sean, do you want me to give you an example? Do you want me to give you an example?
Yeah, give me a specific. That's why I asked you to start.
Give me a specific example of Levy on the cheap.
Give me a specific, yeah.
I'll give you a specific. Jose wanted Ruben Diaz. This was the transfer window at the end of the season that followed COVID, and the season I think ended in August, and then the transfer window went on till October. He wanted Ruben Diaz, Jose. Obviously, the Portuguese connection. This was 3 months before City were even involved in Ruben Diaz, because City bought him in the January transfer window. I think Benfica wanted 63 million. Levy offered 10 million less, and then gave him Joe Rodon at the death for 12 million.
But you don't know any of the specifics of the deal, mate. It's just such a nonsense argument. I'm not saying you're wrong.
You either believe you're wrong or you don't believe.
Hang on. I'm not saying you're wrong, Lubo.
You can just rubbish someone says and not give it the respect it deserves.
I'm giving you the respect it deserves, but you don't know the specifics of that conversation. You don't know whether the player wanted to come. Okay. All you know about is a guy in Mourinho, just like everyone else. You always have to challenge the intentions and the motivations of the people that are making a point. What is it? What's in it for them? And when it comes to ex-managers coming out saying shit about an owner when they failed at the football club, maybe their motivations is to say it wasn't me, it was the big boogeyman at the top.
All right, can I quote Bruno Fernandes then, who openly came out in the press and said, I thought I was going to Spurs. I thought Spurs were meeting the required fee.
Okay, but this is okay, fine, and that's fine, mate. That's fine. But you know what? That's fine. It's fine. You know what I'm going to do? I'm going to go and find 1,000 examples of players that we did sign that we maybe could have missed out on, right? But you people like yourself only ever focus on the opportune moment. This is the whole point. It's whatever stick will do. It's any bashing session will do. And it's like, where is the credit? Where's the consistency? Where is the acknowledgement for the things? And then as soon as there's a chance, I said, mate, if you were Ange in, not you personally, if you were Ange out, before the final, which 90% of the audience were, by the way, 90% of this audience, 90% of every audience. I remember We Are Tottenham TV. I love them to pieces. Ben and Sim, if you're watching, love you to pieces. But for the 3 months leading up to that final, everybody in that chat on their show was vehemently calling Sim a donut because he was backing his boy. Everybody was. The second that Ange won, and anybody came onto their show and said, I'm still Ange out, they got called the donut, and far worse. Saba, you're an example of it. Yeah. I'm an example of it. I'm sure everyone.
I wish I only got called a donut every day on YouTube. That would be nice.
using a gentle adjective to describe what we were all called, right? By the people that 24, 48, 72 hours earlier were saying the exact same thing. The goalposts get moved to be right. Everyone wants to be right. And people that are on the Levy outman, they're happy to remind everybody of the Jack Grealish, the £5 million difference. They're happy to remind you of the Fernandes. We wanted Bruno, we got Gedson. They're happy to remind you of all those things. But if that's fair and balanced, then where's the credit for signing some of the players that we have over the years that were nobodies when they came to us, that were everything when they left, like Michael Carrick, like Jermaine Defoe, like Gareth Bale, like Luka Modric, like all of these guys. There's none of that credit. No one ever talks about that shit. You get if you over 25 years, which is what you do, Lubo. Over 20, I'm not basically over the last 12 months. I'm basically over 25 years. Over 25 years, Daniel Levy took us from a failing football club that finished between 17th and 10th for the most part, and then moved us up to be a perennial team.
Out, Connor.
We got into we were in the Champions League, or we played in Europe for 14 out of the last 15 seasons, and he got us to a Champions League final. He got us to a Europa League final and won it. And I'm not even someone that ascribes the notion that he did it, because I don't think the buck does stop at the top. But for those people that say, Levy out because we don't win enough trophies or yada, 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 what you are essentially doing is abdicating the responsibility and the accountability for all of the other people who's paid a lot of money to do what their job is. Forget all that. because the buck stops at the top. Well, if the buck stops at the top, then when you lift the Europa League at Tottenham Hotspur for the second time in our history and the first time in 41 years, all of you guys, if you are true to your narrative that the buck stops at the top, you should be holding up a Daniel Levy placard. You should have a fucking shrine to the geezer, because he did what no one else has done at Tottenham in 40 years. But you don't. You move the needle to say, let's not forget the fucking wage ratio. Let's not forget this. It's bollocks, Lubo, because you're passionate, and I get it, and I love it. I love that about you. But the inconsistency is where you lose the argument.
Let me ask you a question. Let's take individual trophies out of the equation. Let me ask you a question.
Well, let's not take anything out of the equation. Just ask me a question. Let's not take anything out of the equation, because it will be.
Do you think, having listened to Connor with the figures over the last 25 years, right? Do you think ENIC have given as much as they could have done in terms of making Spurs a successful club? For me, that's the key.
Sean, if you're balanced, the answer's got to be no. The answer's got to be no. Whether you the point you raised
compared to other owners, or just as an owner, just individually.
You've got to compare to both.
Do I think that they put their hand in their pocket? Is what you're saying? Is that the question you're asking? Or do I think they've got the right risk appetite?
Have they done enough to make us serial winners?
No, obviously not. No, they haven't, and I've got a massive problem with them for that. People
that's
think
not subjective, is it, Sean? That's not subjective. That's factual.
No, it's not factual. It's not factual because they're not directly. It's not. It's always subject. Unless someone is responsible for kicking the ball, mate, it's not factual. It's subjective, right? It's always subjective. If Sir Alex Ferguson, is Sir Alex Ferguson entirely responsible for Manchester United's success, or is he a participant in it? It's a subjective equation. It's nothing factual, mate. You need to learn the difference between an opinion and a fact. A fact is something that's undeniable. Something that's subjective is something that has wiggle room for opinion, right? And for me, does Daniel Levy? I've said this a million times. Because I go on rants like I just did, people think I defend him because I'm a Levy in. I'm not. I defend against logic, consistency. That's my problem.
Yeah.
And for me, Daniel Levy's got a bad risk appetite. He's got a poor risk appetite to be an owner relative to the competition. I think that is fair. It's still subjective, but I would agree with you on that basis. Should he have put more money into the club? Well, only if we're all okay with the way that the world works in football. And I'm not. My anger is aimed at the way the system works. You can be angry at like Keir Starmer, or you can be angry at whoever, the Conservative or Nigel Farage. I'm angry at the people at the top of the game that control both sides of the situation. Okay. I'm looking at a different target with my anger.
But you know what?
I'll tell you where I come at it from. I'll tell you where. Look, I think Sean, you make some clearly balanced points on logic around individual things. Like, we can argue all day about, should we have signed Bruno Fernandes? Should we have paid the extra money for Jack Grealish and all of these individual events? But for me, it's the strategy over a period of 25 years has been to put in as little as possible to get maximised return. Now, you could argue that that's their prerogative because they were the ones that pumped it 90 million and none of us did, right? And they're the ones that put up the risk capital. And I don't think anyone in their right mind would argue that they shouldn't get some sort of significant return on that, right? But when you look at how we have run compared to every other club, he can't be right and they can't all be wrong, right? That's the lowest waste to revenue ratio, lowest owner financing. They can't. Why do other football clubs not operate that way? Now, your point is obviously.
Tell me the six. So I'm going to shut up after this point. I'll let you finish. I'll ask you a question. I'll let you finish, and then I'll let you guys. Because I'm talking too much. I'm supposed to be a host. But if Daniel Levy's got it so wrong, and the other version of it is so right, then where the fuck are the trophies in Aston Villa's cabinet? Where are the trophy in Nottingham Forest cabinet? Where are the trophies in West Brom, in Wolves, in Leeds, in West Ham, in Ipswich, in all of the teams that used to be as successful as Tottenham were back in the day that aren't anymore, just like Tottenham, although Tottenham now are more successful than any of them. If their model is so accurately brilliant and correct, where are their fucking trophies? They're not. There's nowhere to be. I'll save you the trouble, Connor. They don't exist. There's 5 teams that win everything. 5 teams that win everything, give or take a couple of exceptions here or there. And 3 of them have always been the most successful team since day dot of English football. Liverpool, Arsenal, and Man United. And the other 2 teams that win more than anyone else more recently are the 2 teams that got ahead of a set of rules that are bullshit and that have owners that have a different relationship with money. If you are saying that Daniel Levy is a cancer, a poison, a problem because he isn't Saudi Arabia or because he isn't a fucking oligarch, I think your anger is misplaced. I think your anger should be at the people that allowed that to happen, not at the guy that tries to do it organically. That's my problem. Well, that's my answer.
Look, let me answer those questions. I mean, the first one in terms of trophy comparisons. I mean, when ENIC took over, we were the 5th most successful team in England in terms of trophy hauls, and we were the 7th richest club in the world. So it isn't as if we've moved drastically from where West Brom are, where they've never been in the top 30 for either of those
historically, West Brom are a very successful team. So are Nottingham Forest, so are Wolves, all those teams.
But I'm just giving you an example of when ENIC took over, right, in terms of where we sit. So the fact that we're London-based.
Let's use Everton.
Which have been a horrifically run club as well, right? So, you know, we can argue about the way that Everton have run themselves. But and I don't think anyone reasonable is expecting us to go and win everything. And as you say, I mean, Chelsea have cheated for a number of years. Then you had Man City cheat, and that's during a large period of that 24 years of ENIC ownership. That's taken up a lot of the competition, right? So, but the point still remains, which is the point you admitted before. ENIC haven't done enough. So you can accept both things, i.e., ENIC's strategy has been wrong, which it clearly has because it's different to everyone else. You know, Fulham, for example, in the last 3 seasons, their owners have put in more of their own money to try and push Fulham on than Levy did over 24 years. So, you know, that
doesn't mean it's the right strategy because they haven't won anything.
No,
done anything.
Well, but they've also established themselves as from a team that is much, much smaller than Tottenham. They've established themselves as a mid-table Premier League club now by their owners putting in money. So it clearly has made a difference to them in the same way that Aston Villa have come from the Championship and are now finishing above us every season.
Yeah, you're reflecting on Aston Villa because they got relegated once and they spent a couple of years down there. But Aston Villa, historically, over the last 75 years, are just as successful. They're more successful than Tottenham in terms of what they've won.
In terms of what trophies, not total.
In terms of the number of trophies, they're just 2 trophies behind us. In terms of what they've won, they are more. They've won the Champions League. They won the European Cup, right? So. Yeah. I'm sorry. I just.
At the same time, you can't say that where they've got to now.
Is the ailment.
Okay, but you must be able to see that where Villa have got to now from where they were is quite clearly as a result of the money that's been pumped in by their new ownership.
I think it's a result of not spending money. I think it's a result of talent ID.
They're spending 96% on wages of their revenue.
Yeah, but now what's going to happen to them? We'll have this conversation in a year's time. I'll let you carry on, Connor. I'm not asking you to stop talking because I've just spoken too much. I want to get Sava and Lubo in because I'm talking too much for a 4-man panel show. So I'll let Sava and Lubo come in and you, Connor, you please carry on. But I just think that Aston Villa is a brilliant comparison. Sava, I know you love Aston Villa, what they were doing. No, not love Aston Villa, but what they were doing, right? You saw their trajectory, right? But at the end of the day, they haven't won anything yet. They put themselves in a financial bind. They might have to now sell some of their players, some of their best players, to get themselves out of a bind. And
aren't they selling the women's team to get themselves out of that bind?
Exactly, right?
They'll do.
See, I think when we look at the Aston Villa situation, the reason why I use them, and I always get told I love them. I know you just said it flippantly, but the people are saying, "Oh, Sava loves Villa." What I do admire about Villa is since, if we look at the year that we were in the Champions League final, right? They were in the playoff final in the Championship in the very same year. So if you look at the trajectories of both teams in that 6 years, I think when we say what have teams won, I think it's very dangerous to just go by that assertion, right? If we're looking at Aston Villa in the playoff final, no one's saying, well, in 6 years they must start winning everything because what I do like about what Aston Villa have done is they've got the right pieces in the right place, right? They've gone and got a top manager. Unai Emery's a top manager, right? He's a serial winning manager, right? They've gone and got Monchi, who's one of the most respected directors of football out there. Their owners put their money where their mouth is, right? The players they're buying, they're clearly doing their homework. They're scouting well. Not only the ones they're buying, But like that midfield three that played the most for them last season, which was John McGinn, Kamara and Tielemans, cost them £2.5 million. So their free transfers they've got right as well. What I like about it is they're giving it a go. Now, Sean, you're absolutely right. In this next year, we might see that things have to change there, or if they sell their women's team and that pays off the PSI, blah, 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 all that, we don't know, they might kick on. But I like that they're going for it. I like that in such a short space of time, from championship, playoff final to finishing above the likes of Tottenham, 3 seasons in a row now, I think it is. Is it 3 in a row they finished above us? Well, it's definitely 2, maybe 3, right? 2, yeah. So from that point of view, I like what they're doing. But the difficulty is, how do any of these teams, Spurs, Villa, Newcastle, how do any of us actually gate crash the big boys of football? I'm not talking about, look at Villa, Newcastle, they won a League Cup. Spurs won a cup. I'm talking about Liverpool, Man City, Chelsea, Arsenal. These guys, I know Arsenal in the last 5 years, but these teams serially win trophies.
And always have, right?
I know they have. So how does anyone break into that regularly? How does anyone suddenly go, right, hang on, Spurs win trophies every year now? You know, I think the problem you've got now, you've got Man City, Chelsea, Liverpool, Man United, Arsenal, right? The big 5, if you will, right? Then you've got Spurs, Villa, Newcastle want to be in there. Then you've got, so that's 8 teams. Then you've got the Brightons who are doing their thing, Fulham's, the Brentford's, the Bull. Everyone's going to sit there and go, we want to break into that. We want to break into that. Guys, there are 3 domestic things that can be won every year. 3, right? Only 3 teams for me can win the Premier League. And that is, it's going to be Arsenal, Liverpool, or City, right? And then the majority of those teams win the cups. This year, I know the anomaly, right? Palace and Newcastle. But if you actually look at who's won these trophies for the last 20 years, it's normally the big boys. So I do think that I kind of agree with what all of you were saying, if that makes me a politician, but it's very difficult to suddenly go, right, Levy should have us doing what Liverpool are doing every year. We're not as big as Liverpool. We don't have the pull of Liverpool. Liverpool can ring up Florian Wirtz and say, we want you. Right? Liverpool are about to get Mark Guehi. They can ring Palace and go, Guehi, hello, mate, you want to come join us? Yeah, cool. You're Liverpool. We don't have that pull. So I'm not sure what people are expecting. And sorry, that was a really long rant.
No. Listen, for me, listen, I've always said there's no guarantees in life. And for me, it's not about Levy guaranteeing trophies. That's never been the case. All I want is for Enid to have a go, to give something back. Because all they seem to have done is take, and they don't give anything back to the fans. You know, it's all very well Levy hating the fans, and I do believe he hates the fans. The comment he made at the Spurs when they met with the trust, when the trust were fighting discounts, and Levy turned around to them and said, our senior citizens don't need a discount, they're all rich, just shows you the appalling attitude that Levy has towards the fans. I think it's disgraceful. I heard this from somebody who was in the meeting who heard it. Now, this is appalling. This is how he looks on the fans. A friend of mine has been a season ticket holder for close on 50. He was a season ticket holder for 50 years. He had a massive fight with the club about being put in. He asked when he turns into a vegetable age to be put behind the goal, which he finally got. They gave it to him a year later. He wrote to the club. They ignored him for 3 months. They ignored him. His son then put the story onto Twitter, and within 24 hours, the club were back in touch. They wouldn't give him the discount for the previous year. They gave it to him for this year. The way they look on the fans and treat the fans, I'm sorry, is just appalling. No, it's just dreadful. It's dreadful.
To be fair, Luba, the only thing I would say is that is systemic of Premier League football clubs now and the ownerships, right? In terms of that lack
I'm not saying I want our own.
It's also government based, mate. Like the government have just put in, not to get politics, but the government are putting in like means tested things on, like, you know, on the pension, on means tested on the heating stuff, right? Like at the end of the day, mate. Look, at the end of the day, you can cherry pick every moment you want because you've got your indelible mark in the sand where you hate the geezer and you think the owner is terrible. And so any little moment you can, you'll pick up the stick. You can use anecdotal stories to prove your point, but at the end of the day, things like the senior citizens discounts, Tottenham Hotspur are not the only club that changed that. We are moving into a world where 65% of the population are going to be senior citizens. If you think that the entire population of Tottenham fans should get a 75% discount or a 25% discount because they've got to 65, when at the end of the day, mate, there's a lot of people out there that are 30 years old that haven't got a house to live in. They have to rent because they can't afford, and they have to pay full ticket. And yet, as someone who's 75 years old, because he might be a millionaire, maybe in his assets or maybe otherwise, if you think that it's a clean story that doesn't require context and correlation, and you're just using it as a stick to bash him with, you come across as an opportunist in the argument, mate.
Nothing's black and white, but a 75-year-old doesn't have the same opportunity as a 30-year-old if he wants to go out and get a job.
The 75-year-old bought his house when you could like own a house for 6 times your yearly earnings, mate. No one at 30 years old can buy a house now with like 20 times their yearly earnings, bro. So like, don't blame Daniel Levy for the state of the economy, mate. Like your argument is absolutely insane on that regard. It's mad.
His comment that every senior citizen ticket holder at Spurs is rich.
It's a fact that more millionaires exist in the 60
Sean, you're arguing for the sake of it now. Come on.
I'm not arguing for the sake of it. You are taking any stick you can get to bash him with, Lubo. It's embarrassing, mate. Anyone knows anything about economics knows that what you're doing is just opportunism, mate. It's a political argument. It's bollocks. It's bollocks.
That comment was dreadful. It's an awful comment to make and should never have been made. Your
argument, mate, is based on your hatred of the guy rather than your basis in reality. It's absolute nonsense, mate. It's nonsense. I'm not going to sit here on my channel or any other. We've had rows about this before. When you say this absolute waffle, I call you out on it. After the stream, you'll probably go, no, Sean, you're probably right when I explain it to you. And then 2 weeks later, I'm going to hear you say the same bollocks on someone else's channel. I'm not going to allow you to say this shit to 750 people, mate. What you're saying is total fucking nonsense.
It is. Let me go back over my conversation with Levy at the AGM. Let me talk about that. Let me talk about when I got up and spoke. Me to him. This is not subjective. This isn't he said, she said. This is me and him. And I turned around to him and said, How do you justify a 57.6% increase in my season ticket? You get up, for people that haven't been to an AGM, you get up and you explain who you are. You follow the club, been going since 65, home since 69, season ticket holder since 81, away from home since 72. You explain you're a long-standing supporter. This is around 2006, 2007. We'd never been in the Champions League at that point. And I explained all of this. Right, so he knows he's talking to a shareholder, not only a shareholder, but a long-standing, passionate fan. And I said, what gives you the rights? How do you justify increasing my season ticket and the season tickets around me by 57.6%? And his answer was remember, he is a chairman of a public company at that time. So you would normally think to yourself, thank you very much. Appreciate your loyalty to the club, etc., etc., etc. His one-line answer was, it's a privilege for you to come and see your team. That was his one-line answer. There was across the whole room. People just could not believe that he could answer in such a horrendous, arrogant way. Please don't ever tell me about leaving when I have this personal experience with him. This is what he thinks of fans like me. This is what he is. He is cold, emotionless. He's like a robot. I'm sorry. We need people. Football is about emotion. It's about feelings. as well as money. It's not just about money. The fans go there not for financial gain. They go there for emotion, to feel, to enjoy, because they love the club, to get that buzz. So
listen, I'm not gonna spend any more time to sort of picking apart why that your story is entirely it's just an anecdote and therefore doesn't belong in a debate. There's no point. There's 10 minutes left, guys. Saba, guys, by the way, there's 750 people here. Love it. And please make sure you smash the like button, smash the granny out of the like button. Please also go up into the pinned comment, right? You can find Football Inc., which is where Johnny and I every day talk about whatever's happening in the world of football. It's fun as hell. An hour every afternoon. The link is there. Football Heritage TV's link is also pinned in the comment. Please make sure you go over there and send your love to him. In about 10 minutes time, 9 minutes time, I'm going to be ending this stream and you're going to get sent straight over to Football Heritage, where Saba's going to be taking on the rest of the evening. And I hope that some of these conversations can continue. I don't know what your show's about, Saba.
Everyone's welcome. Just follow me over. You lot as well. Everyone just come over and we'll just let Lubo lose his mind about Daniel Levy for a few hours.
Before I do that, though, please also, I want to say, like, first of all, I'm sorry. Like, when these moments come up, I forget that I'm a host and not a guest, and I talk too much. I apologize. But Levynomics, Connor, I love Connor. He's an absolute legend. He's new to the community, but he's been a big advocate of his financial acumen on Twitter. If you love what he's saying, and if you are someone that is interested in the financial side, and obviously Connor, I think, leans more Levy out. He's not happy with Daniel Levy either. Levynomics 1882 on Twitter is where you can find him. But I think Connor and I are going to get to know each other a lot more on this channel as well. Hopefully, Connor, you're going to become a regular on the show. I think you're really good value, my man. And obviously, Lubo_61 is where you can find Ian Lubin. And also, guys, listen, I don't want to talk too soon, but if tonight's spiciness has been a little bit of a little ratatata for you, we're not there yet. We haven't quite figured out the details. We're getting there. But in about maybe a month, 6-7 weeks time, before the start of the season, Sava, Lubo, myself, Johnny H, who's not afraid to give his opinion and say his words, and of course Stelios Tritios is also going to be a part of hopefully a new show, a new channel called the Spurs 5. It's going to be wild. You can expect shows like this on amplified levels. So maybe I'm speaking too soon there, boys. Maybe have I spoken too soon?
No, it's happening. It's happening. Can I just say, sorry, I wasn't laughing at any of you. I was laughing at there's a comment in your chat from Noel who says, I want a signed Lubo 7-point manifesto.
I think it was 8 points. I think it was 8 points, Noel. I think it was 8 points. Yeah.
That made me laugh.
So what are you expecting out of the Spurs 5, mate? Since you mentioned it, it's going to be wild, isn't it?
But listen, I just think that the 5 people you've got creating this channel, the Spurs 5, all of us have very, very strong opinions, right? Very strong opinions. My biggest bugbear is sometimes I watch a lot of YouTube shows. This isn't just Spurs fans, by the way. This is a lot of football shows. And I'm left thinking, I don't know what your opinion is. You're flowing like the wind. You know, you're saying what I feel like you want your audience to be happy with. And I don't think any of us 5 do that. And for me, I think it will be no holds barred. I think it will literally be, there will be shows where people probably think we absolutely despise each other. And there will be shows where everyone thinks we love each other. So for me, I want it to be different. And listen, it's the ultimate non-echo chamber to have 5 personalities that I agree with Lubo on loads of stuff and disagree with him on loads of stuff. Same with me and Stel, same with me and you, same with me and Johnny. I don't think any one of us 5 agrees 100% on everything. So I think it's just going to be, cray-cray, as they say. I think it's going to be fireworks. I'm looking forward to it.
Connor, I think we might have space for guest appearances as well to make it a 6th. I think you'll bring in some value, mate. I'm sure you can come in several times on that one, mate. And Lubo, I want to give you guys sort of last. We've got 5 minutes left before we got to transition across to Sabas, and I'm going to come over Saba because I've got more I want to say. I'm riled up right now.
You're all welcome.
Lubo, I'm going to give you and Connor and Saba last sort of comments right about Daniel Levy right now. You know, I guess we're going full circle with 360. He said the words, Eze, looks like there's something happening there. Are we Are you guys optimistic? As much as you don't trust the geezer, are you optimistic that the fact that he had the stones to say it at the start of a window seems more... It's either incredibly stupid or there must be some reason why he's done it now. And does that not give even the most pessimistic Levy suspicions a reason to be a little bit kind of optimistic around what's going to take place over the next 60 days? Luba, I'll start with you, then I'll come to Connor, and I'll give Sab a last words.
I think I'll be amazed if it happens. Talk about the big picture with the whole transfer window in terms of buying the players we should be buying and not looking at it from a financial point of view. I'll be very happy. I'll be the first to come on here, Sean, and turn around and say Levy's changed. If I feel he has, if he's going ahead, and he's buying, if he's following my 7-point manifesto, I'll get behind him. Honestly, I will get behind him, because all I want as a long-standing fan of the club is for the team to do well. And if we've got owners that are giving everything 100%, there's no guarantee you're going to win trophies. But all you can do is your best. And if Enoch give their best, and we're still not, and then I'll be behind them 100%. I just want people that give their best. That we're all, as fans, we're giving 100%, and we're not getting it back. So if he does buy Eze, if he goes on a spending, if he goes and buys the right players, Sean, then yes, I'll be delighted. It doesn't have to be mad money, just so long as they are right for the first team, right for the club, and they improve the club, improve the team.
Nothing like Lubo to give a subjective answer to his demands right at the very end. It has to be the right players, the right players. I'm not sure what they are. Lubo, thank you very much for coming on.
Sean, he's employing Thomas Frank for that, isn't he? Frank knows that.
Lubo, thanks for coming on, mate. Lubo_61 on Twitter. Guys, all of the links are in the description. They will be, certainly, if they're not now, they certainly will be in after the show. Connor, mate, same question to you, buddy. Is Daniel Levy's early statement now, the timing of it, does it just suggest that this time it might be different?
Contrary to the 24 years of data that we've got to support that it might not be, I'm optimistic on the basis of a few things that have been put in motion. Charrington joining the board, Vinay coming in, him making that sort of statement. We know they wanted inward investment. So I'm just hopeful that something's going to come in the way of some sort of inward investment, which will mean that we spend what we should on both wages and transfers.
Sensational, mate. I know this is your second appearance on this show, third overall on my channels, mate. I'm getting to know you, mate. I think you're awesome. You're balanced. You come in with facts and stuff, and you also don't react to my outrageous aggression sometimes in my commentary. I appreciate you for doing that, mate, because other people sometimes it creates chaos when I go the way I do. Sava, mate, love you as well, mate. We're moving everybody over to your channel in about 2 minutes' time. Final words, mate. Sav, what's your thoughts, mate? Is Daniel Levy gonna put up this time? Is he gonna show us that he means business, or are we gonna be left to be deflated at the end of the summer?
I kind of echo what Connor said. It's like that. All 24 years of evidence has made me go, "Oh, shut up, Sean. You know the answer." But it's that. Listen, I think the fact that they've had that clean sweep now across the board, haven't they? I think the only one that has survived is Lang. I think the only one that survived is Lang. Cullen, retiring. Manager gone. Coaching staff gone. New, as you said, Charrington's now on the board. The fact that he's, everyone says he does everything cheap. He's just paid 7 million to get rid of Ange. Then a further 10 million to get Frank in. So already we're 17 million pounds. He's put the money down and done it. I think he'd be the world's most stupid man to do that and then just continue doing what he's doing in the transfer market in terms of just buying loads of kids. I genuinely don't think he's going to do that. By the way, that doesn't mean I think he's going to go and buy Eze and Buemo, Semenyo, Grealish, and Paulinho. I don't think we're going to get all of them, but make a statement.
One or two.
Get an Eze. See, I'd love an Eze and Semenyo. And by the way, I'm warming more and more to Semenyo. Just saw today he won more duels than any other winger. And I like that.
He's a class player, mate. And his striking ability. His striking ability is insane. He hits the ball like Ronaldo takes a free kick. He seems to find that spot on the ball where it just does it the ball doesn't move, and he's not looking to place it in the net, but he is. He's finding it in the corner. I think he's got so much about him.
I want powerful players, Sean. Like if you look at Eze, if you look at Mbeumo, if you look at Semenyo, Paulinho, these are men. Like I feel like we've built this squad. It's so paper thin. Even when I look at Bentancur, Gray, Maddison, Johnson, Son, Tell, that for me they're all very slight. I think we need some brawlers, if you will. I think we need like something I hear quite a lot. And sorry to ramble on is our attitude. I think we need a bit of attitude. I think this squad needs a bit of attitude. I don't want videos of them playing Uno at the training ground. I don't give a shit about that.
Yeah.
I don't want
Paddle or whatever
Sonny's got a fucking handshake for everybody. I don't want that.
100%.
I want a bit of.
I agree.
I'm going to say this and it will sound bad for a soundbite, but I want men. Give me men. I don't want a skinny little kid that comes into the team and we're all going, oh, he needs to bulk. No, get me a man. Get me Semenyo.
If you can go and get yourself, if you can go and get go and get Eze, go and get Semenyo, do the double, and then go and get a Paulinho at 30 million quid. And you know what? Tottenham are rocking, and I think that any Levy out of there can't complain. Even Lubo would struggle to complain.
No, listen, I'll be happy. I'll be happy. Listen, if he does the right thing, I'll praise him. No question. But start doing the right thing, for Christ's sake.
We'll see. Guys, it's 10:02. We're going to literally stay where you are. There's 670 people still here. Stay exactly where you are. We're not going anywhere. This conversation is carrying over. I think all four of us are going over to Savas, so the conversation can start again. Quickly, Adam M with a super chat. I think is that Czech Republic, I guess. Thank you very much, mate. He says, great debate, lads. Kudos for all keeping civil with such different and very valid opinions. I appreciate that, mate. That's what we try to do. I think, if anything, I probably was the one who was getting more riled up tonight than anyone, which is pretty typical for me after several siders. And Daniel Field has come in and says, smash the Ethel out of that like button, which is what I asked you guys to do. Thank you very much. And Joshua, cheers, Daniel. Appreciate you, mate. And Joshua came in earlier saying, off topic, are Crystal Palace out of Europe now? I'm not sure. We can figure it out over on FHTV in 2 minutes. Guys, we're going to leave it there. Massive thank you. Please, before you go, if you're not coming over to FHTV, then please do, if you're on Twitter, smash the granny out of the follow button on Levynomics1882 and for Luba_61. And if you haven't already, then the like and the subscribe button for Football Heritage TV and for Football Inc. are in the pinned comments. We'll see you in a couple of minutes over on Football Heritage. Thank you again. Hope you enjoyed it. See you tomorrow for more with Bugsy. Cheers, guys. Bye.